All right, folks. So we got into this a little bit last week, the free enterprise stuff. I want to push through and see how fast we can move on this. Of course, that depends on how long-winded I get today. But we had talked. Do we get to? Did we get to this slide last week?
Yeah.
So the last thing we talked about was the comparing mixed economies. We had talked about this before.
You go back. No, we weren't even there.
So we've already done this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we already did this. This is all from the notes last week, so if you were a little watcher, I have a link for you. We talked about the comparing of the two. The one thing I did find I want to clarify, I was talking about um, Buddhism and
I don't
gods.
remember the graph, the arrows. Did you talk about that?
There's nothing to write down. This is literally just me talking about. So I talked about Iran. I mentioned to you guys the leader of Iran talking about homosexuality. Iran, did I bring this up? No? Okay. So one of the things that we look at in regards to the correlation, first off, correlation, causation, doesn't make a difference. If I were to kick this table and everything moves, did I cause that to happen or did I correlate it to happen? I cause it, right? Boom. Something's going to happen. It's a cause and effect. Correlation, if I sneeze and all of a sudden your pen moves, my sneeze caused the pen to move. No, but there's a correlation. If I sneeze all the time, people's pens move while I'm sneezing. Correlation, I didn't cause it. It's meant to be this link. It's kind of a weird. One of the weird ones. They actually have things that they look at that are correlated. Like a couple years back, they were watching the Washington Redskins, and every time the Washington Redskins won on Sunday, Washington football team, whatever the name is now, they then the next day the stock market went up. Every time that team lost, the stock market went down. The Washington Redskins, the Washington football team had anything to do with stock market going up or down? No, there's a correlation. Anyways, one of the things we look at in regards to the more government we have versus the less government we have, we run into situations where the government, the social stuff can impact. Right? So does anybody know what religion Iran is? They're Muslim, right? So it's an Islamic state. They run on Sharia law. A lot of what they do is based off of the Quran and the Hadith and a lot of the Holy Scripture. How do they deal with homosexuality in Iran?
Didn't you just say they don't?
They don't. And I'll show you a video here in a second. A couple years back, the leader of Iran was in New York giving a speech. I'll show it to you. And he basically just says, we don't have that issue in Iran. We don't have to deal with it. Does anyone give a guess as to why they don't deal with that in Iran?
It's not. Is it not? Is it against their religion?
Mm-hmm. And if they do come out in Iran, what could potentially happen to them? Yeah, trouble's like the minimum. Like you're talking prison for life and or thrown off the top of a building. So they don't have homosexuality issues in Iran because they don't deal with homosexuality. Matter of fact, it was right after the video I'm about to show you came out. There was a guy that had escaped Iran, was living in the U.S. He said, I came out in Iran and they threatened to kill my family, so I had to escape. I went back over to somehow get out. And he was able to escape to get to the United States. So you have that. Now the other extreme is you go over here to Singapore, which is very, 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 very open-ended. They actually have, and this is I looked this up to confirm this. They have two different gods. Actually, they have thousands of different gods in Hindu. One of them is Vishnu, and one of they call it the female avatar of Vishnu, is Mohini. So one of the gods has a female form that it comes out as from time to time, depending on situations. And the other one is Shiva, which you guys may have heard of that god, Shiva. And one of his forms is androgynous, meaning we don't know male or female. So with that being said, one of their gods is both male and female. So if I'm looking at that type of society, what do they typically deal with? How do they deal with homosexuality and or transgender?
They accept it.
Very, very open. And in fact, that's one of the largest areas in the world. If you want to go and find transgender movements, that's very, very like part of the culture. Hindu, Buddhism, because of their gods. So again, you can look at sometimes the correlation between the society, the type of economy they have. The more strict you have, the less freedoms you have in general, and then the more freedoms you have, the more freedoms in the economy, the more open it is to almost anything and everything. So you'll see that from time to time in societies. This is the actual interview with Ahmadinejad from years ago, and that's it's a weird name, but that was the former president of Iran.
In Iran, we don't have homosexuals. I don't think you're.
Catch up with me.
Country, we don't have that in our country. In Iran, we do not have this phenomenon. I don't know who's told you that we have it.
Right, so the crowd's laughing at him, but he's legit serious. He's not cracking a smile because they don't deal with it. And then he goes into the culture of women and women being beautiful and being honored. And there is an aspect of that in Islam. And many people that you know that might be Muslim that live in the United States, that's very, very much part of their cultures. They allow like the women, the beauty of women and their aspects, but there's some tenets of some parts of Islam that looks at women as representing different parts. So if something good happens in a family, the man is honored for it. Something bad happens, the woman is blamed for it. So you have different issues over there with Iran, or I should say with some of the theocratic Sharia law. This one, I talked with you guys about the caning aspect of Singapore, getting spanked. Okay, so one of the things, and I think I had the video up last week, one of the things they have in Singapore is literally spanking people as part of their punishments. So if you were to do something wrong in the school setting, like the career center, they would actually spank you in front of the whole school. And then we have this, it's a bamboo stick, comes about 3 inches long. They soak it in water, so that's super, super durable and flexible. And then they literally latch you on something and they spank you. And then you listen to this kid talk. This is back in '94. He was caught vandalizing some stuff, and he claimed that he was cheated in the system, but he was getting spanked essentially in Singapore. It was six spankings, and it was reduced to 4. But he talks about it in a second. But one of the things that was discussed, because all the years I've been talking about it, I always thought it was just like a full-on swing through spank. But he'll actually say he heard him take some steps as he loaded to hit. So it was more like a wind up and a pitch type situation.
In March, news a Singapore court had sentenced an 18-year-old American to 6 strokes with a bamboo cane that swept round the world.
It's the first I've heard of it. I'll look into it.
And Michael Fay, who insists he was tortured into confessing that he spray-painted cars, was instantly caught in the middle of a raging debate.
Yes, says one. People should be responsible for their actions. Let the vandal take his beating, says another.
If anybody just put themselves in this position, I don't think anybody would want their kid or someone close to them to be beaten with a cane.
After President Clinton personally appealed for leniency, Singapore reduced the sentence from 6 lashes to 4. But that wasn't much consolation for Michael Fay.
I was bent over halfway. I mean, my back was bent in a 90 degrees, and I was buckled like this. And he's whipping it as he's going on each step. And he was really whipping. And yes, I can. And on the third step, he strikes. And he cuts open the car. there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things.
Throughout the incident, Singapore insisted its strict laws made it one of the safest nations on earth.
All right, so, I mean, if you don't want to get spanked, don't do anything stupid in Singapore. So, well, that's what they have. So whether stupid or not, that's what they have as a law. All right. So for this one, some basic characteristics of a free enterprise system. So we've looked at mixtures. We looked at market. We looked at command. We looked at traditional. Now we look at what we are operating with in the U.S. Right. So we have a couple of things that we typically look at. One, opportunity. Right. So in the U.S., you are more than welcome to try. Give it a shot. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't, well, I mean, the whole Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook started out as him as a college prank, trying to rate girls at his college, good versus bad, and then it's expanded to another school, and then expanded to another school, and then it had the thumbs up, and started just going crazy from there. YouTube actually originally was a dating app. We used to have the old school where you actually make a video, people would watch your video, and like, say, I want to meet with this person. Or YouTube kind of tried the digital version of it, and then all of a sudden it became what it is now. And there's other companies that have tried and failed. Like Vine was good for a while, disappeared. That was your lifetime. Musically, turning to
TikTok.
So there's, I mean, you name it, it's been bought by Google. Years ago when I was in my master's back in 2010 of all times, it was 2009. There's this new program. It was so cool. I could be typing, and you could be across the states on the exact same document, and you and I could interact using the same Word document and interact with each other. So cool. And then about a month later, the project or the company that did this went away. You never find out that Google bought them. And now you get Google Docs. They basically bought the technology and created what they have. A lot of stuff that you see nowadays from Google is things they do from other companies, and they just bought them. They just made it their own. So opportunity, of course. Incentives. Think about the financial incentives that are out there nowadays. If you have a successful business, this is why you have so many Instagrammers and YouTubers and people that have TikToks, but they also do their whole online persona. There's one I watch. I can't remember that's her last name. But first name's Kat. She was married, now she's divorced. And it was a whole TikTok thing, romance, and she actually talks about it. So now we have a YouTube channel that she gets free stuff from these companies and she advertises. Lele Pons is still around. There are some of the other people that are on TikTok that are Charlie D'Amelio is now has her own. Does she have like her own show or something?
Yeah, she's got a movie on
Yeah.
Netflix.
So, I mean, everyone tries to make it big, get enough views. Kind of cool.
But they're making more money than like surgeons.
It's crazy. Well, again, this is driven by our demand, though, right? So if we don't want it, if no one watches it, what happens to those people? It goes away. But we like it, we have fun watching it, and then people pick up on the dances. That was the whole Charlie D'Amelio thing, right?
Yeah, how she's still a dancer with it too.
And then she tries to, like I saw the other day, she's trying to make a new version of dances and then see it. Profit motive, incentives kind of go along the same lines. Competition, this is huge. The more competition we have, the better it is for us as consumers. We talked about this a little before. Legal equality, everyone has the same legal rights. So the law is the law is the law. Everyone's supposed to have access to the same opportunities. Private property rights. Imagine, I always find this amazing. Imagine if we didn't have private property. It's kind of one of those things when you think about, well, I wouldn't for cars, your house, your cell phone wouldn't be your cell phone. I could just take it. It's on out of the backpack. I like to I'll just take it. It's not private property. It doesn't exist. We don't have that. So in a free enterprise system, though, we do. Private property is private property. And then free contracts, voluntary exchange. You guys for the most part, there are situations like insurance where you have to, like car insurance. Health insurance a couple years back under the Affordable Care Act, the original version, there was a penalty if you didn't buy it. So from time to time, you run into different things. But for the most part, on a day-to-day basis, if you guys don't want to buy something, you just don't buy it. Someone's offering candy to you, or candy bars or something, I don't have to buy it. You know, if I want to. And then who in here has ever signed their name on a check if they've ever been left in there? Get tip on there. It's a free contract that you ventured into. Anytime you sign it, you look below it, it says the above signed agrees to. It's a contract. The other thing to keep in mind, we do allow in Ohio handshake contracts to exist. So you can still do a handshake contract. The next one is where do we fall in regards to our roles? So the free enterprise system, we all have our different positions, our different roles. The consumer, voluntary choices, therefore, companies are going to try to take advantage of it. Ooh, this, all right, how about this version? If you guys have ever, I think Amazon is probably the worst series right up there with it. I think Amazon listens to more series program owners, but I'm going to say that first word and then Siri. Amazon is listening to this all the time. It looks for, tries to get trends, and then when you go on your Instagram or you open up something, all of a sudden that's ad is popping up. You have to physically go in and change the settings if you want that to go in. Like I have one of those Amazon Alexas in my room. Probably spent way too much money on it now I think about it. But it had a camera on it, I had my ability to close the camera thing. Slide it over. Just in case it's if the camera goes up. So or it can be put on if they want. It's kind of it's just
It's moving.
scary. And that's the weird part is I'm doing it to myself. TV, same thing. But again, we voluntarily buy those things. We let those things come in. The more consumers buy, the more producers make. The less consumers buy, less. Again, this is basic. But the big one here is interest groups. This is one of the big ones that we typically don't think about all the time. And the fact that I can actually impact what's being sold or what's not being sold at companies. So, for example, let's say that you guys have an issue with one of your teachers, and you individually went to the principal and complained about it. Might something get done? Maybe. The principal might go to the teacher and say, hey, this sounds something I need to talk about. But what about if your lab and the other lab, or the junior and senior labs all got together and said, hey, listen, let's get together and put something together, and then we'll all go talk to, or I'll put this together and we'll get a signature on it and go to the principal. So 75 people will have a bigger impact than one person. Yeah, if everyone's saying, hey, this teacher's doing this, and it's really, then that would be legal. We had a teacher in high school. It's one of those things where you learn what not to do as a teacher. The first thing he did was he had white hair one summer or 1 year, and then he came back and his hair was again. Like, he was green. So, my buddies, well, you guys know Ganley Ford, Ganley Dodge, and all the Ganleys. So I was in high school with Ken Ganley. Now Ken Ganley is getting older. Yeah, that's it. So I was that, but it used to be his dad that owned everything, but his dad passed away, and of course gave it to his son Ken, and now Ken runs everything. He's a multi-millionaire, I'm sure. Anyways, Ken was the one that would always lead because he was kind of cocky anyways, but he would lead the mantra in class. It was kind of funny because I felt bad for the teacher to a point, but then he kind of fed into it. And like, wow. So we would say, one person in the class would say was, and someone else would say white, and someone else would say now, and someone else would say red. So all you would hear the whole class was white, now red, was. So we were just making fun of his hair. And then he would get mad at us. He'd be like, all right, guys, I'm going to the basement and see how I'm doing right now. I mean, it works. I'm in the basement. When I get back, you guys better calm yourselves down. So then he would stand there at his desk and do the whole, and then turn around and come
How
back up.
old were
And
you guys?
I was junior high school. Yeah, I was actually back then. It was like, oh my gosh, just stop. You just need to stop. And then the other thing too, and you guys may have had a math teacher that did this, drove me insane. He would take the whole board, so back to the chalkboard, so it was just full board and get over here at the end and say, all right, and if you got this right here, anybody get this? And we'd be like, oh yeah, I got it. We're thinking we were all proud of ourselves. It's like, that's the wrong answer. Over here, at this like step 3, we're supposed to do this. You're like, son of a, got a full page. It's in my head now. And then you erase it, and you have to go back. So now I'm studying. We actually, we as a class went to the principal and said, something's got to be done. Both sides, all too hard. And then I think everyone except for 2 people that failed this final exam. 2 people that I get 2 minutes. It was like, and I'm talking not just like 1 or 2 of us, but this entire class, like all of us. And it wasn't on purpose. Like we didn't do it on purpose. But here's a fun one for you guys. Have you ever seen that character? There you go. Jesus was outside, right? So Jesus is a character randomly shown on South Park. South Park, a while back, wanted to do a whole full series. Creators of South Park wanted an entire series on Jesus Christ. And there was a large outcry by family groups and some Christian groups. And they ended up getting like, I think it was like 1.5 million signatures, maybe 2 million signatures, and sent it to Viacom, which is like a parent company, saying, if you move forward with this, we will not only boycott you, Viacom, and everything you make, we'll also boycott any of the companies that sponsor any of the shows. So like McDonald's or Kmart at the time, or any of those are sponsoring the show, we are not going to shop there. So again, if it was 100 people that set this with South Park, Viacom, is there anything to stop? No. But does a Jesus Christ series from the South Park creators exist? No. Because all the sponsors contacted Viacom and said, all right, we can't lose 1.52 million customers. So figure out another way, have them add a couple more scenes in one of the original cartoons that don't create, right? So interest groups can really impact, especially if you really stick together. The entrepreneur, this is the person, if you guys are ever looking to open your own business, this is the person, the big one is taking the risk. They put the money, there was somebody I heard argue a while back that the workers should be getting more of the benefits. I understand that. We should be taking care of the workers. I concur. As an owner of the company, I want to make sure my employees are happy. Right? But did they invest $10,000 to start that company? Did they invest the extra hours on top of hours, on top of weekends to get it going? No, they could show up for work for 3 or 4 hours and then they left. They show up for work for 3 or 4 hours and then left. Right? So do I want to take care of my employees? Of course I do. But they don't have as much to lose. If my business goes under, I lose $20,000, $30,000. And for me, with the business, 15 years of my life going into the business. So that's where the entrepreneur kind of runs into the system. Some of the protections that you guys are given. First one, Fifth Amendment, protects your private property again. If the government does have to buy your land, or take your land, they have to buy it from you. So there is something, this is part of there's a whole little spiel that goes around this alley. But there's an eminent domain. So if the government wants to take your lands for, quote, unquote, public use, they have the right to take your lands. But they must pay you fair market value. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these letters, but the county auditor every year will send your parents, if they own their home, a letter, and it basically says your home has been valued at this much, and we will therefore tax you at this rate. So if the value of the house goes up, then you have to pay more taxes. When the county or the city needs to take that land, that's all they have to pay for you. So if it's valued at $150,000, they'll start with $150,000. You can deny it. You will eventually lose further down the road. So what will happen up front is the city or the county or the state will say, okay, well, here's $5,000, which is $155,000. How about 160, 170? You can push, but you also have to know that fine line between them going, all right, listen, we've been kind and offered you this. Now we're going back to the original 150, and we're just taking it and you're getting along. Right. There are court cases that are still out there. There's a couple ones that are. There's one that has made the whole eminent domain kind of sketchy, and it was up in Connecticut, and this is where I haven't heard of another Supreme Court case to deal with it, but there was a community that voted down the strip mall. So no, it's not allowed to come in. We don't want it here. And then about a month or two later, the mayor sold the land to the company, regardless of the city, because the mayor decided that the amount of employer and people getting jobs would benefit the city. So he did it for the good of the city, the public good. And they won. They got the Supreme Court won in favor of the mayor. So even though the people voted it out, the mayor was able to prove that it was for the good of the country, or the city, and therefore they can still use them. So you're running into sketchy ones here and there. Because it was a strip mall, it wasn't like a school. If it was a school, okay, that makes sense. Like Brunswick, they bought, if you guys have ever driven down some of those roads in Brunswick behind the new middle school, but yeah, they bought some of those houses, so they knocked them down. There was one guy actually, the side entrance behind Speedway, you guys know what I'm talking about? That used to be a house, the guy worked at it for years. I was there in 2011, and up until like 2 years ago, the guy was like doing little things here, little things there. It took forever, and then one day I drove by it, it was not done. It was gone because the city had bought it and they used it as a driveway entrance. Taxation, sadly, they can tax us, right? 60th Amendment, levy income tax on individuals and businesses. And then C, I talked about this already, you guys can enter into contracts. You are guaranteed that right as a citizen. All right. Now, this one, there are times we do allow for the government to step in and help us out. Some of those are for the public interest. So if you have me for government, we talk about do like random drunk driver checks. They are allowed to do that as long as it's random. We're not picking every single car. So yes, you come through. It's not every single street in the city. It's one street, and if you happen to be driving by and you get pulled over, has anybody ever been in one of those random? You have to drive into. So what will happen is you have like one. Imagine you're driving down the Main Street in Medina, and you're passing. Usually, you're passing Applebee's, and there's a cop literally in the front in the middle of the road, and he's like pointing everyone over. You have to go in towards Hobby Lobby, and then there's going to be a police officer there. They're going to come over and check your car and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Ask you other questions and say, "Thank you very much." Those are allowed because of public interest. We want to randomly, kind of like the drug search the other day here at school, random. You guys will never know what's coming. It's because they want to be able to check and see. The other ones that we look at is pollution. I think I told you guys this the other day. Cuyahoga River, 13 times on fire. The one the EPA was created thanks to Cleveland House, the Environmental Protection Agency. Unsafe foods, unsafe medicines. We would like the government to provide us some sort of standard. Who in here works in food service? How often do you clean? Yeah, it's not as hot. Right? It's part of the unsafe foods thing. Now, the other thing, and we're going to get into this Medina County Board of Health. This is actually an interesting one. I have to see if there's a new version because COVID, there was not a 2020, 2021 version. Yeah, I would take it, yeah, because I'm not sure when we come back. So, before we get to this, in regards to the free enterprise information, this is all, probably the past 15 years, this has really kind of become a big thing. The public disclosure laws, who in here is, well, your lifetime, all of your menus in your lifetime have always had the calorie intake, All of your items you ever purchase at any store, no matter what, has that, all the nutrition, the
Info.
calories and all that stuff on there. That used to not be around. That used to be like, here's your products. And if they gave us information, great. Now it's mandated. So even like Panini's, which is more of a Northeast Ohio location, if you look at the recipe, it'll actually have like 750 calories, just so that we have that information. If you guys look at the menus from now on, you'll see all that little information, calories, and then if you want to, you can get a full, like McDonald's used to give them out to you, a full printed piece of paper that would have all of the calorie intakes, all of the nutrients, all of the you name it goes on there. Ads are not allowed to be deceptive, so who here has ever seen the 5-Hour Energy ads? So there was one a couple years back. It was one of the Browns receivers, and in the games he hadn't caught a thing. He dropped pass. In the commercial, it shows the 5-hour, somebody throwing the 5-hour energy, and so it shows this receiver going up and grabs it and catches it quickly. And he's like, when you're struggling, take a 5-hour energy. He's advertising for that. And someone called it on the radio station and said, can we sue 5-Hour Energy Company for false advertising? Because in the commercial he caught something. In the real games he hasn't caught a thing. So, anyways. But I came across this a couple years back. I think you guys are really going to kick that. So these are health violations from around the county. So just to give you guys an idea, and the people that are in the food service, you'll understand this a little bit more. Violations in general are like, I left the label on the counter, or there was a rag in the wrong spot, or the garbage wasn't empty, versus your critical violations. Those are like, I left chicken out, or I didn't wipe where the chicken was and left the salmonella up, or the food wasn't hot enough to keep the bacteria out. So different things like that. So if you're like buffets, you're supposed to keep everything at a certain temperature to make sure that nothing grows. So when you see those, the goal here is to go down. So that was, does anybody know where the Huddle House is? I think Dan's Dogs, new ownership, previous owner kind of crazy. They got worse. Probably why there's new ownership. Taylor's Diner in Lodi. Heard it was down during COVID. I don't know if it's back or not. El Patron. I've heard of this place, not them. Dragon Buffet. Now again, this is 2018. We tried to find a 2019, 2020. I'm wondering if there's a 2020, 2021 on that. I'll check and see. Quaker Steak. Loggerheads are good to hold. Very, very good food.
It is. It's so good.
This one you're getting, I mean, come on. It's raw fish. You're going to have violation after violation on this one. I
They don't have,
my favorite place.
I imagine any sushi place you're going to have some
but they don't have 23.
Correct. Touche. The other thing, too, you guys know about the half price sushi night, right?
Yeah.
Why is it half price?
It's gone bad.
Because the next day is a shipment coming in. You got to get rid of all of the stuff that's been there for a week. So if you get sick that night or the next day, there's a reason. Fresh Food Deli. I've heard about this place. I saw it the other day. I drove past. I've never been in there. Heard they have good beef fried chicken.
Deep. Well, the place looks like
Geppetto's, Medina, Lafayette Markets. Have you been to this place? Okay. Mapleside. Depending on which owner you're dealing with now, because how many owners have they gone through?
No, they usually they include something that lives there.
Okay.
I know me.
Okay. They do a good job with the festivals that they have. It's like this place I've been told looks a lot better now.
I hope it.
They were literally in the middle of construction. Of course, when I took the picture, I had to laugh. But one of my students said, "Oh my gosh, no!" They were literally in the middle, and they were done like the week after this picture was taken, with all the renovations. And then one of my students was like, "My dad delivers ice to that very ice machine." But I heard the pizza's good. That's better than that's in Valley City, right? I have not been. God bless you. Luda's in Brunswick. Oh, not bad. You go in, you can smell the grease, and you leave, you feel the grease. It's like a good dive place. All right. Okay. So all you gotta do in this one is write the dates. So for these are some of the things that we've created over the years because of situations like the whole FDA 1906 Food and Drug Administration. Anybody know what happened around 1900? Yeah, so that kind of was like the inspiration for the government to go, well, we should probably what's that? Was he prison? President. Oh, Upton Sinclair. President at the time. That's Teddy. Yeah, Teddy was big on creating new agencies as well. Same thing with Woodrow Wilson. FDR, which is a big one. More and more government stuff. Yeah. How about the FDIC? Insurance, 1933. It happened around that time that they thought they should take care of people's savings. Great Depression, yeah. It was literally, have you ever heard of a run on the bank?
Oh, what?
A run on the bank. So the way this worked, the reason we even had the Great Depression, the reason why people for years would hold things in their houses and put them in their mattress and save them because they didn't trust the banks. So what was happening was, let's say that you had, every one of you guys had like $1,000 in savings, right? And I was the owner of the bank. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's $11,000. Well, the company that was building houses in the community, they got a loan from us for $15,000 to build someone a house. Well, that company had to call the loan because of other things that were happening at the federal level, and so they contacted the bank and they said, "Listen, we're calling the loan right now, so we need everything right now." Well, I only had $11,000 of their savings, so what I did was I took all $11,000 and I paid this company, and therefore I was still at $4,000. But now, what happens to all of the money you guys have? $1,000. So what happens when people are trying to get the bills paid from you? They can't get it because they literally have no money, so they can't get their bills paid, and so they start rummaging and scrounging for everything. So no one has money because the banks are basically fake. So what happened in '33 was the government said, "All right, we'll insure you up to a certain amount of money." Now, because of the 2008 crash, I believe it's $275,000 per person now. So if you have up to that much money in the bank, and the bank fails, the government says you're insured, we'll pay you back all the money you lost. If you're over that amount, though, we'll only pay you what we're insured. There's the EPA. That's our lovely mistake on the lake issues that we ran into. And then 2010, what was that? I actually already mentioned it to you a couple seconds ago. Why was this one? That big crash we had, the banking crash, where the government had to step in and bail out all the banks. And 2008, and it took a couple years for it to. Same thing with this one, because this was like 1902, 1903 when the issue came out, and by 1906 it was taken care of. 33, it was actually 1929. It takes some time. It's a good one. Anyone heard of 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania? So 3 Mile Island was one of the nuclear power plants, and it had a potential leak. And so but there was no regulations up to that point. It was a new energy that they were just working with.
So-
on the island.
That's nice.
So there was no proof that there was leaks. There was no future evidence. Nothing happened in the area, but there was this fear that there was a crack in the basically the tubs that keep everything cool, that keeps the uranium in. Where they were able to seal everything off and make sure nobody had any issue. But there was a potential nuclear meltdown, which would have taken out miles upon miles upon miles upon miles of people. Same thing happened a couple years later in Chernobyl. So that, if you guys have ever seen one of those horror movies, there was one that was actually made about Chernobyl. It literally had nuclear fallout, and people were killed that were close by, and then people had mutilated, like they had deformities, and their kids had deformities. And it was also we're going on 30 years ago. So yeah, so right about now, those kids are about my age, and probably if they have more kids, if they have grandkids, all of them potentially have some genetic issues. Yeah.
Wait, so when a nuclear leak happens, how do you complete
It goes. You
it? Like,
can't.
does it, like, how
There's-
much does it
there's-
spread out?
It does spread out. I'm not sure how far it can. I mean, depending on the wind too. That was the other thing too. Is if there's a big, huge, if it gets up high enough in the atmosphere, you could take it hundreds of miles. But like if something went off in Cleveland right now, we would be affected, but nowhere near as much as like Korea. We would have some issues. We'd have some. If we were looking at the actual blast, we could lose our eyesight or actually have it very damage. Nuclear fallout wise, other vegetation would have issues. We might get little burns, chemical issues with our breathing. So if you were up in like a Berea or Euclid or Westlake even, you'd probably potentially have like houses knocked down, people burned. There's a book a couple years this summer I listened to it about the whole dropping of the bomb in Nagasaki, and they go through like the details of some of the stuff that happened. It really it was nasty. One of the things we run into if you have too many rules, it's costly. I gotta spend money to implement those. Anybody know? Well, let's look at New York and California. Companies that are going out of business because of some of the government mandates. You just can't deal with some of the COVID masking stuff. So, sorry. So the more rules you make, sometimes the more people tend to leave the game. Has anybody ever had that when they were little, playing a game with your friend, and they were changing the rules, but they were always winning? You're like, well, I don't want to play anymore. I'm going home. I'm not taking my ball with me.
So you really want
Or Monopoly. Is there anybody played Monopoly the actual way, like according to the full rule book?
yeah, that's how my mom insists.
That's like insane. So typically people over the years have like modified the rules and play your version. Sometimes like there's another game called Risk. It's all about military conquering places around the world. It's a long game with all the rules. And sometimes you go like I tried to play with my buddy one time. I was like, forget that's too much. Yeah.
We started Monopoly in one thing, so
Social media.
Yeah.
All right. We'll stop there. Hopefully I finish tomorrow.
Thank you.